Hi, everyone. I'm joined by Z Hosain, co-founder and chief evangelist at Aeris. Hi, Z. How are you?
I'm doing well, Susanna. Nice to talk to you.
All right. What an achievement. 100 million connected devices. I believe we surpassed that as we entered the new year. Congratulations.
Oh, this is absolutely a fantastic moment for us. I can tell you that. If you don't mind, I'll blather on a little bit about
Sure.
where we've been in the past. We started out in 1996. I was number four in a team of six that founded the company. Quite literally, the technology we developed happened on my dining table. It was a meeting between the technologists at the time, the partner we had from the local carrier, which was a AT&T franchise, Cellular One, if you remember that name. They don't exist anymore, of course, and myself. And we sat down and we hammered out the details of how the technology was going to work. This was in January of 1996. It took us a while to get our setup going. I wrote the first HLR. My background is in software and in development engineering. So I wrote the first HLR we had as a tool to show that it could be done. And we went on the road. Our marketing head at that time and we were 3 or 4 times a month, we were traveling. And we happened to be at a place in New York where a company called Ademco, ADEMCO, which is part of Honeywell, now Honeywell Security, were looking to build out their own national wireless network to do backup wireless transmissions for their business and residential alarm systems. Literally, when you press a button on an alarm panel or somebody breaks into your house, that's what they used was landlines at the time, literally dial-up landlines, and they wanted a wireless backup, and they were going to make their own network happen. And they looked at us and said, wow, we can make it happen with you guys. And we said, well, we're stitching together a carrier network. And we went at that time, pre-Verizon, Bell Atlantic 9X, Ameritech, all of the majors. Ameritech was in Chicago, Bell Atlantic was in New England. And we said, this is what we're stitching together. We've got a giant customer who's interested in doing this on a nationwide basis. And they said, okay, prove it. So we did. And it was fantastic. I can tell you that the system worked beautifully, and it worked so well that Ademco, who was going to use it as a backup system to their landline dialing, was discovering that the landline dialing, if you had an event at your house or business, which would take 15 to 20 seconds, we would successfully deliver the message in 2 seconds anywhere in the testing that they did. And they loved it. They absolutely loved it. So they began development on the system. They helped us get our contract with Bell Atlantic 9X, which is now part of Verizon, which was absorbed by Verizon. And there we went. They deployed their first unit, and this is incredible that we've hit 100 million, right? They deployed their first unit in May of 1998. Certified the product, made it work, and in the New England area, in the Bell Atlantic 9X footprint, we put the first 10, 20, 50 units in the May and early through mid-May of 1998. I asked, at that time I was helping our accounting folks with controller functions, if you will, and I said, hey, I want a copy of the first revenue bill that we sent them. So we sent them a bill for that first 50 or say 70 units. I forget how many it was. And they sent us a check. It was for just over $100. I made a copy of that check.
No way.
Unfortunately, not been able to find it. I'm going to continue to look because that is our first $100 of revenue in August of 1998. Absolutely fantastic. And we expected we would grow. And over the years, we added more Ademco units. They were one of our larger customers, as a matter of fact. And we added Qualcomm with their trailer tracking product. And we just continued to add units. Now, this was on the analog cellular system. So obviously, we knew there was a finite lifetime for when that would all switch over to digital. And in February of 2003, approximately, the FCC allowed the carriers, the nationwide carriers at that time, Verizon had formed and AT&T was now a giant conglomerate, etc. They had absorbed all the A-side carriers. They basically told those carriers, you have 5 years to deploy digital everywhere, and then you can shut down the analog system. So we saw the handwriting on the wall. We were profitable, by the way, in 2004 and 5, which was very good. It was a tiny company. We only had about 50, 60 people at that time, all located in our headquarters here. And although we had some people around the country, sprinkled around the country, like we do today. We had services in Canada, and we had services in Mexico, and we had services in the United States. Nowhere else in the world. So that changed later on, by the way, which was kind of cool, and I was helped that happen. When we peaked in 2006, 2007 timeframe, we had about 1.7 million units. all on the analog wireless system. And we knew they were all going to be removed by February of 2008, and things were going to transition to digital. So we had started a project to go digital, primarily CDMA on, at that time now, Verizon, because that had come into existence. And they supported us. They said, yeah, we'll sign a contract. We deployed the digital version of our technology, and they loved it, went forward with it, and we were profitable for about 3 or 5 years. And then, of course, we had a natural, those 1.7 million units through 2008, were taken off the air, and we were transitioned into digital. Our first customer at that time was, at that point, a tracking application, which was the trailer tracking from Qualcomm, number one, and number two. We went and PeopleNet Trimble was the big customer at that time on the truck system. 2004, we also started work with Honda on their Acura product line. So that was our first foray into automotive. They signed a contract with the conglomerate of us and Honda signed it with us. Hyundai signed it with a company at that time called ATX, which was going to provide them the connected car services that they needed. And I forget whether it was Honda or Hyundai that did the appropriate things. But anyway, it was a giant conglomerate. And by that time, Chrysler was on board. So we had a whole bunch of car companies that were coming on board, and we went for it. So when that downturn happened in 2008, 2009, from the analog systems going away and we were going digital, we knew we would be removing those systems off the air. We went down to about 25,000 units, 15,000 if I recall exactly at the bottom end, and then we built it back up. And lo and behold, we are at 100 million. It just absolutely staggers me that we were able to come back up. We're in the top 10, I believe, globally deployed units around the world. If you think about it, a few the giants are in China, probably, the top 3, I would suspect. And then you have the giant MNOs, mobile network operators, and a few competitors to us that have come into play, particularly for our IoTA effort. And so it's amazing that we have reached over 100 million. It's just absolutely exciting. And I can tell you this, in this January 18th, by the way, I'm going to be celebrating my 30th anniversary with the company. And I love the fact that we have been able to successfully make it through a couple of interesting headwinds, global economic headwinds. And we are now at a place where we can proudly say we're one of the giant IoT suppliers of connectivity and related services with security and data analytics, all that kind of stuff around the world. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. We went from a few people around your dining table to now over 700 employees in 190 plus countries. When Aeris started, you think back on just this timeline over the last 3 decades. What were the biggest turning points where you really felt like, wow, this is going to scale. We're going to grow. This is not just the few people in the Bay Area, that we're going to go global. What were some of the milestones?
Oh, that's an absolutely fascinating question. And I think the first milestone that I will point to is the fact that when we went outside the boundaries of the United States, we were able to sign up a Canadian carrier and a Mexican carrier. And we said, this is capable of being used anywhere in the world because wireless was connected. And you had the ability to call people from Canada into the United States and vice versa. And that ability was the thing that triggered the future growth. So the first one would be the fact that when we landed the Canadian carrier and we deployed on them, I think that would be sort of a milestone that we could say we can go international. It is not just US based, and we can make it happen elsewhere around the world. And the second achievement, I think, was the ability for us to say, well, how do we go beyond the United States into other markets with partners potentially? And I had a friend who was working with me on the board of the CDMA development groups, the CDG, and he was the vice president of international roaming at Vodafone. And he looked at one of my presentations one day. I happened to be sitting in Long Island, New York, doing a presentation, and at a carrier, satellite carrier, by the way. And he looked at me and said, "Why aren't we talking?" And I said, "Tell me more about that. Why aren't we talking?" And I said, "Well, we haven't expanded our plans to go international yet." And he said, "Come talk to me." So I met him in the Netherlands. He was based out of the Netherlands and where Vodafone is located. And we sat down and we said, "This is what we do." And he said, "We would love for you to use our roaming network." Great. Now, because of the time zone differences, it made a lot more sense for me to connect him with Mohsen in our UK office. And we hammered out the agreement and we went for it. So that was, I think, the second part of it was the fact that we had opened a UK office to start looking at European markets, but we needed that carrier presence to help us get started. And that's, I think, the second major turning point. The third one was the entire acquisition of the Ericsson effort.
Yeah.
We had had our own efforts along those lines over the years, which hadn't gone very well because the carriers didn't know whether to treat us as competition or partners. And that was one of the biggest issues that we had to overcome. So we kind of sort of drifted in that area, frankly, till the opportunity with Ericsson came along. And that just opened it up to the point where I think the growth factor is just phenomenal. I can tell you that in the early days of our analog deployments, we were adding more units per quarter. I have a study that shows this than the major carriers. We were adding more cellular units every quarter than Verizon and AT&T and all of those folks who were out there. So our partnership with Sprint was a natural. They loved the fact that we were doing that. This was back in the mid-2000s, 2005, 6 timeframe. And the fact that we are now adding more units per quarter for IoT than the carriers do for adding smartphones and other things to people, phenomenal. I love that. And I think that's a major achievement that we can be really proud of.
Last question. As we look at the next 100 million, what will be some defining themes, in your opinion, that will broaden out IoT in terms of its market trajectory, where we're headed? What do you foresee?
You know, we've done this for the past couple of years now, which is the whole security effort, frankly, Watchtower, Aeris IoT Watchtower. I did my first presentation on IoT security back in 2005 at a conference at the Mobile World Congress, the American version of that, which was called CTIA Wireless at the time. I did a presentation that said, you know, we've got to watch out. We've got a situation where you have these devices that aren't being designed properly. I kind of sort of think that I may have used the term security by design the first time ever, but you know, hey, I don't know. I won't take ownership of that. And what happened was that I did a presentation in September of 2005. The next January, there was a keynote at CES by the Undersecretary of Commerce. I forget her name now, but she basically looked like she had taken my paper from the CTIA Wireless and basically taken sections and said security is going to be a big deal. That was it. And we have, over the years, evangelism is in the early days for IoT was a big deal. And I think evangelism for IoT security over the past 2 to 5 years has been a big deal. But people are recognizing that that's going to be the watershed. And the reason I say that is because when we crossed over another interesting global threshold, which is that we now have more IoT devices deployed than human beings on the planet, that's impressive. And then the number of cellular IoT devices, which is where we play, has been achieving staggering growth, 3 to 4 billion units out there already, and continue to grow. When we end up in the 2030s, this is when I think it's going to happen, when we now have more cellular IoT units than we have smartphones in the world. That's another watershed moment. That's going to be a defining moment for IoT. And if we haven't taken security into account, and this is where my evangelism comes in, and the presentation that I've been working on with the IMC and the GCF on security, is going to be essential, because when you have smart human beings on a smartphone that have been attacked, you can sort of contact them and they can sort of say, oh, something's not working with my device. They're using the human intelligence aspect of saying something is wrong. With smart devices, when you have hundreds of thousands or tens of millions of devices on a single application deployed that gets attacked because of a vulnerability, perhaps a newly discovered vulnerability, you have a situation which is just rampant for massive problems in the industry as a whole. It is my concern, and I've been saying this, this is sort of not a great positive thought, but a negative thought as well. The day a security problem for an IoT device impacts a human being badly, physically or medically, or potentially, God forbid, worst case, fatally, that's going to be another watershed moment where people will sort of realize IoT is here to stay, but we need to protect it. And I'm predicting in the next year or two, an event will take place that will capture the imagination, like IoT has captured the imagination of people, that will capture the imagination for IoT security, and people will be clamoring for it within this year or maybe next, worst case. That, I think, will be another watershed moment. It'll just be fantastic. So to me, the fact that we were early in the game, where we have received awards for what we've done in our security products, fantastic. We're there, people see us, people will find us, and then this becomes a big media push to basically say, hey, IoT security is critical and vital. We'll be there and say, we've been doing this for 20 years, and for the past 4 or 5, we've been offering a product. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, fantastic. I love it. It shows Aeris continues to innovate and continues to show up, really helping businesses not only grow through IoT, but also defend their devices and make sure that they are secure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the fact that the mobile network operators who are frankly in competition with us also trust us to be partners with us is another phenomenal achievement. I think it is great. They respect us. In fact, a very interesting point I will mention, back in 1998, when Ademco, the CEO of that entity, went with us to present at Bell Atlantic 9X, which is a pre-Verizon entity. The CTO at Verizon, Bell Atlantic 9X at that time, basically told us, we like to do business with people that we like. And that, I think, was another defining characteristic of our company, which is that we do business cleanly, we do it professionally, and we do what needs to be done in the space that the carriers can make that kind of a statement. And even though we're competitors, they like to partner with us. That's absolutely awesome.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Z. I appreciate it. I love being able to chat with you on a regular basis. Congrats to you and to the entire Aeris team.
Thank you very much, Hosain.